Three, two, one. We are live, everybody.
This is 2OF Entertainment.
Here we is.
Oh, another great day. Oh, we're going on.
Yeah.
I was tapping my foot again, so we're just getting used to that. Theme song, it's just like, it grows on you eventually. Like moss, it grows on you.
And you have a phenomenal two guests today, a husband and wife duo, which I'm very excited to hear about. And I've seen their webpage and what you're going to show. And I'm excited to see how much of YouTube is going to let us get away with it. And two, I'm excited to see and hear their stories. So it's very, very cool.
Yeah, there's a life story as far as the pair of them working together, and then also they're sculptors. And I'll say this, very risky sculptors. They take high risks in the actual doing of their work. They're actually in their studio in Monaco, which is very cool. And Blake Ward and his wife Boky Blake's from Edmonton, Alberta, and he has his studio located in Monaco, which is just unbelievable. So we're gonna have this great opportunity to talk to them about their art journey and where they're going and where they've been, and it's going to be just
and maybe you throw in a little F1, just saying, for me.
I don't follow car racing that much, but okay. I do hear about it.
It's not a car race. It's F1, Paul. This is totally different. This isn't like NASA where they NASCAR where they make left turns all day. This is F1. This is like a little more pageantry.
Ripping through the streets and zigzagging, going everywhere, and you're back in a circle within about a minute and a half in a Ferrari. Perfect. Yeah, I love it.
There you go. Very exciting. Yes.
Classy race. Yes, I love it. Anyway, we'll talk about classy art. I mean, we're talking about classical, beautiful stuff, and it's great that it's being produced in Monaco. I mean, unbelievable. See, anyway, just bring them in, and we'll just we'll talk to them.
There you go. Welcome to the show, guys. Have a great show.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi. Hello.
Paul. Hello. Yeah. Well, it's exciting. I've been waiting a long time to have this show. We've been different pathways for a while, and just now we can finally connect. We've been having this opportunity to talk about your work. I mean, some of this work is I've sort of followed Blake's work for quite a while, actually, from the early days on Artists in Canada, and quite taken by it in the process. Now, Blake, you're classically trained. Am I correct in saying that? Yeah, 18th to 19th century figurative work, and you have to shut somebody down a little bit. But things have moved along a little bit from there. You pushed the classical aspects of sculpture, and I would like to talk to you a little bit about your journey and a bit about Boky, your wife. Welcome as well, and how you work together as a team to create this sculpture. I'm not going to show any sculpture just yet. We're just going to talk about a little bit about your journey first, then we'll put images up here which will blow people's minds. I just really, truly think so. Anyway, your art journey, how does that, and your teamwork aspect that you're working on?
Well, I started off in the University of Alberta, actually, with an MBA. An MFA, not an MBA, an FA in the fine arts department, and got a degree there. And Boky started out in the music world, and conceptual work. And then when we got together, I just basically insisted that she have something to sell.
To be a part of the team, you have to contribute. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And the conceptual work was good. You can put that in, and she does.
So the journey, as far as you started it, okay, you've got some educational aspect, like you've had your training. Did you travel the world a little bit, and you've seen
yes
classical pieces around the world?
I started doing University of Alberta. They really couldn't teach me the figure, and I was interested in doing figurative work. So I had to more or less when I moved to Paris, I got a job offer, a real job, and moved to Paris. And then I studied in Paris for about 4 years. At night, I had my real job in the day.
Don't we all? They all have to have the real job so you can be an artist. It is typical of that. So it's good to hear that, though. That's part of understanding that you can't. It's rare that you just go in from university and get into your occupation full time in a studio. It's rare that that happens. Um, yeah. Well, so how much are you going through? How much of your work is commissionable? Do you work on commissions, or do you work mostly producing a body of work and then go from there?
I did do commissions for a long time, portraits basically, but found that really they were it's hard to satisfy a client because they have an idea of what this should look like.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so it's it's better. I suggest that they do it next time.
I think I've gone through that as well. I found that it's very hard to reach that. You're bent over so far, it's really not your piece of work after a while. And I found that was very true of a lot of those. Some artists are very good at satisfying that need. And it's good that they're able to do those things. A lot of it is in just, say, commercial portraiture in painting, for instance, or drawing. But now we're going through sculpture, and you think classical sculpture. Okay, you got the figure, the female. Traditionally, the female model is probably majority of the classical figure rather than male, but there is some male as well. So you go through this and say, you can present it, because I've seen some of the work, beautifully nice lines and beautiful shapes and beautiful women. I mean, they're beautiful women. And I think we're going to talk about what happened to your beautiful women in a minute here. I think maybe, Stephen, we're going to start up our first slide here and just have our opening there. There we go. I love this piece. I mean, and I've seen a number of your pieces in the early stages of some of this development. I think I've seen some from the early classical, and how I think you at times you're doing both at the same time. Is that correct?
Yes, we do. We don't really do much classical figurative anymore.
Right. But in the early days, when you were transitioning, you were still doing some of both. And how many galleries? Where are your galleries located right now?
We've got a gallery in Vancouver and in Chicago, and
Toronto,
and one in Toronto.
Yeah.
And then we've got one here in Monaco.
Okay. So keep them busy, and they're how is your stuff received by, I guess, the galleries and your patrons? Like, what are their ideas and their thinking? Where does this come from?
Well, you get a lot of clients who do want the older, the more classical figure. The clients that want something more abstract are usually younger, and often, not to say often they're just taken by the piece. This is a good example of this is taken in Carrara, actually, at the carving studio in Carrara.
So you work in marble as well, or have worked in marble and stone as well as bronze. That's typically so. So do you work in a lost wax process? Is that what you work?
The bronze, yes, and for the marble, we do I work in clay and then plaster, and then I have it copied because I can no longer carve. I had a wrist problem years back.
Yeah, people. I think I've known quite a few artists that to get into it with carpal tunnel. They really from holding tools, they develop the coordination. You just can't hold the tools the same way anymore. And stonework can be hard on your whole body. Actually, I think.
Yes, you can.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is a beautiful piece. Just shows some of the torsos. Like, so, how are you taken with, like, we have a lot of these, of course, very representational of, say, a Greek style. I mean, you got no head, like a lot they're just torsos and bodies and shapes, and torn figures are starting to appear, I think, from the early stages, right?
No, this would be the early stages in the 80s and 90s. I really stuck to the whole figure,
Okay.
and then started to move out with the fragment. So there's a good example of you know, the low at the bottom is a good example of the whole figure, which I loved to do.
Right.
But then, you have to evolve as an artist. You need to keep on reinventing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it can take the risk factor, moving from I guess, what people expect you to paint, like in the old days, paint or draw, and even with your sculpture, what people expected, well, Blake does this kind of work, or Boky and Blake do this kind of work. And then all of a sudden a change comes and you go, oh my goodness, what are they doing now? That there's that shock factor. So you've really created, I guess, when we go through this body, we'll show this body of work a bit, you can really see eras where physical changes in what structures look like. I mean, the early stages of refined figures down to what we're going to see here a bit coming up in the show here. So we'll just go.
Well, I think one of the things is, if you look at Blake's early work, it's very academic, the figurative work. And so his obsession at that time was outer beauty. And as we transition, there's an evolution in his work from one collection to the next, where he begins to look more inward. And with the Spirit collection, which is the collection that we do together, that's really what the main focus is, our inner world.
Yeah.
And inner beauty.
So where do you find that inner world? How do you get to that space?
Well, I think we came through it quite slowly, in this figurative work that you have up now. Well, here's a good example. This we wanted to push the figure forward. This is the type of work that you could say, well, maybe it was done in the 1800s, maybe it was done earlier than that. So I realized that I was living in centuries past, and I wanted to push the work forward into today.
Right.
So with the fragments was the first start. And I decided I would make the figure, and then I would destroy it.
There you go.
So that's what I'm doing here.
This probably this probably was a shock to not only the model, but to a lot of people to say, I mean, you talked about you could spend 100 hours doing a piece of work to get it to a certain stage, and then all of a sudden you take a hammer to it. Like,
yeah, the model actually was there to see this, and he was quite upset. He was Italian, and my Italian wasn't very good, so he didn't really expect this. So it was a shock.
He's been posing for days on end, and then finally at the end he's like, "Oh, it's crap!" Bang! Hit a hammer on it.
But the clay is very fragile to begin with, and right. I let it dry, and as it dried, it cracked on its own, which is really quite nice. I think that it was naturally.
So early on we talked a little bit about, like, you've traveled quite a bit. You taught in Hanoi, is that correct?
I was invited to teach as a part of the official curriculum in Hanoi.
Okay. How long were you there for? A number of years?
I was only there for about 6 months, and loved it and loved teaching. And it was funny because I I arrived, and the Russians were the last teachers really in Vietnam, because Vietnam closed in 1975. So the French were there teaching in about early 1900s, and then after 1975, only the Russians were allowed in, and so I was the first Westerner to teach in Vietnam since the fall of Vietnam. Vietnam really inspired this collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
so.
It was early.
How did that? Okay, how did that?
1990s.
Yeah, how did that influence what you were working on? The time in Vietnam and the experiences of what was going on in Vietnam, and
well, as a Canadian, I never fought in that war, but I had some friends that did, and so the Vietnamese War, the American Vietnamese War was. I grew up watching it on TV, and so but to me, in 1975, it ended. And then I go back there in the 1990s, late 90s, and I find that it hasn't ended. It's still going on. Landmines we're still killing people. Now, in all fairness, they have more or less solved that problem today.
yeah.
But in the early 2000s, throughout the first decade of this millennium, there were still people dying from landmines and unexploded ordnance. So
Right.
that inspired this collection of work.
Yeah, yeah, and I see a real. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say this collection was actually very successful in raising funds for clearing landmines all over the world, not only in Vietnam, but in Cambodia, even
Kosovo.
in Kosovo. So it has been a really, really great thing to be able to use art so that art can speak, art for life's sake, which is a really nice thing to be able to do.
Yeah. These ones do speak to that very strongly. The questions come out like crazy, one right after the other. So if you're in a gallery and saw that, or somebody's home, or in a presidential palace, you'd still get those same questions. Where did that come? What's that about? Where did that happen? Who is that? Why did that? Why is that there? Why did you get that? So a lot of things that I think people could resonate with. Say, I want one of those figures because that is one of my beliefs. I believe in what you're doing. And I think a lot of sculpture might, like other works of art, people, it resonates with them. Either you've been to that place before, or you have a sympathetic ear towards something that's going on. And when you have an artist that can respond to it and I'll say it's in an aggressive way, because this was a beautifully refined figure to start with. And
yes.
It's been disassembled in a very graphic way. You've torn and ripped and tried to, and all I can say is really you've tried to represent a lost limb in bronze, right? It's how do you, the tearing of the clay has to be right. The things to make it look like it was actually an ordnance has blown that leg off, or pieces of body are missing, yet still make it look beautiful. Like there's still a beauty in the horror, and I really love that, because it's sort of like watching a classical Greek statue slowly falling apart, been nicked and banged and things, and it still has the classical edge to it. I love that. I mean, the work is beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed. I really did. I was inspired by the remnants of classical sculpture.
Right. Does it sort of mean also the end of classical sculpture? Could that be read into there as well?
Personally, no, but perhaps, yeah. I mean, the figure, we've been doing the figure for 10,000 years. So I don't think the figure as an art form will end anytime soon, but we're doing it in different ways.
Yeah, and I think as an artist, you're always trying to find a new way
Yes.
to do things, and I think you've done that. I mean, it's, my short access to artists as well as what their other sculptors are doing around the world. I know of other artists that are doing war-related pieces, but not so much in a graphic sense that I know of at the moment. Right now, we've got this image up here is like three different shows that you've had with the Fragments series. Can you tell us where each of the three are and a little bit about those areas in the gallery?
The one on the top left is in Hanoi.
Yeah.
The one on the top right is London, England. And the one at the bottom was a museum show at the museum in Yellowknife, where I was born.
Where you were born, yeah. It's a beautiful gallery. Looks beautiful gallery.
Yes.
It's nice to see these pieces in an uncluttered situation, right? They're not in so many galleries, excuse me, they're just a white room, a white box. I guess that's what it is I like about this. And there's some color value that really, I guess it's sort of like really good framing on a painting. It has a really nice background that gives a uniqueness to that show. All three of those shows are the same show in basically, but they look different and refreshed. That's what I really liked about them, is seeing it's the same but a little different, and it's relative maybe to the area, like Hanoi being different than Yellowknife. And anyway, I think that would have been an amazing show to go through. I love the fact that you can walk around these sculptures. They're not all against the wall. They give you a really nice feeling that you can spend more than, I think, what they say, 30 seconds in front of a painting. Maybe you would spend. I think people spend way more time in front of your sculptures than 30 seconds in front of a painting in the Louvre and moving on, right? It's just that way. Anyway, gorgeous.
Thank you.
Really nice feeling. I think people can get a sense that your shows would be just amazing to go to. And you had just had a show last year at the Petley Jones, did you not, in Vancouver?
Yes, we show almost every year at with Matthew Petley Jones.
Yeah. So I encourage people who are in that area to make sure you take in your shows, because they would be just amazing. I've unfortunately not been able to do that, but maybe just bop out one day and just go to Vancouver for the show.
Yeah.
Surprise us.
Yeah, I do.
I'd love to. I think I did see you dash out of a gallery one time in Edmonton.
Yes. Unfortunately we lost a few galleries in
over
COVID.
Yeah. It's Alberta. Alberta's a tough piece of country. It's kind of oil based, and Calgary's worse than Edmonton, I think, for that, because the oil capital being Calgary. And when oil is in a bit of a downturn, and then COVID, like you said, they shut things open and close quite readily. I don't know what it is, but gallery is just a tough business. Being a gallery owner, it's a tough business. Sculpture, what is it like for selling sculpture? Like for a gallery,
it's hard for a gallery because you need storage in
yes,
you need a lot of storage for it, because you're going to have to store the crate, and so it's tough. It's more difficult.
Yeah, the shipping aspects as well becomes a big, especially if it's really fragile pieces. And
bronze really isn't that fragile, but it needs to be well packed, and usually it's packed in wooden crates.
Yep, for sure. Yeah. And you don't write fragile right side read, because that means they're going to tip it upside down the other way.
Right. So you have to expect them to do it and pack it accordingly.
Yeah.
I think sometimes they use those packing crates to put under the wheels of the plane to stop them from going forward or back on the runway.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just when it says fragile, does that mean I'm supposed to catch it when I throw it? Anyway.
So this is the ReThink collection, and ReThink is a kind of a political collection. Again, it uses a lot of the figures, but again, the idea was to present them in a different manner. So I graffitied them and gave them a political or a reason that is written on them.
Yeah, I think people need to really go to your website and see the video that's on your website to see them as they turn around in the perspective of it, so they can get a sense of what it's about. And I almost didn't see it as graffiti, though. I really felt it was too refined to be graffiti.
Okay.
Graffiti a lot of times is, it's spray painted, a soft edge, and it can be tagging of a certain kind. But I felt this was almost like a dance. Like it became a very celebratory dance I saw in this, where instead of wearing cloth and clothing and things, they were just painted figures. And there's so much of that painted body out now that people paint the painted bodies, and I saw some of that coming into this thing and saying, well, that's kind of cool, right? It's really you're actually really wearing your colors. Like it's just, and anyway, I saw this freedom, and I see different things in it than maybe what the intention was. And I love the face. The face just, it probably got me more than the figure, which is beautiful. But it's just that, I don't know, there's a sincerity, but a naivety about that face for some reason.
Okay.
There's a bit loneliness in it somehow as well, but that's me. And just what I like to see. But I like people to go and take a look at your stuff on your site, on your website, when we conclude. So this continues. It almost feels, it's not fragments, but it's some.
No. In fact, this is again, this is ReThink, and the piece on the left is called 1989, and it's a monument to Tiananmen Square in one way,
right?
And that I wanted to put a dichotomy between Tiananmen, and which is, in a way, it ended up being treasonous, and the other side is a representation of South Africa, the end of apartheid, so a revolution. And the difference between treason and revolution, of course, is simply who wins.
Yeah. So how important is politics and human condition part of it?
Not really a politics, but it's got a story, and ReThink is about human rights.
Yeah.
And the human rights were taken away into Tiananmen Square, whereas they were given to the population in South Africa. So I thought it was a nice dichotomy.
Yeah.
This piece was built in Toronto, actually, carved in Toronto. And the second piece is called Faith, Broken Faith. And I think faith is one of the things that we really need, but today it's difficult to, if we don't have faith of a theologic bend, perhaps we have faith today in a different area, and we need faith.
Yeah. So how strong do you think your voice is, that the works that you're doing, are they creating concerns like in China or other places?
Well, I mean, the 1989 got me banned from China. So from that point of view, and also, I've done some. I recently did some NFTs, videos that were NFTs, and they kept on getting taken down, probably by China. I don't know that, but I mean, who else is going to do that anyway? So I try not to be too political, but I just try and address things that are important to us as a civilization, And I think we Broken Faith and 1989 does that. Both.
Yeah. Well, I think as long as you stay with the human condition in your responses, I think you're fine. I think that's a beautiful way of doing it. It's when you do say, I don't want that person in government and that guy out and this guy. That's a whole different kind of thing other than this is universal. The other stuff is very, relative to the term of that person in politics. But this kind of thing is universal. It stays for a lifetime, and we tend to be cyclic in what happens, whether this be the Romans and you can say how they treat each other through in our past, and we should be learning from our past, but unfortunately we tend to not. Yeah.
So this is the Spirit Collection,
Right.
which Boky and I build, and we build it together. We work together really well. We build them in wax,
Right.
and then have them cast.
Lost wax. And for instance, the one on the left, I did one of them and Blake did the other one. And the funny thing is that I like his better and he likes mine better.
And they do look like the same person did them. So you guys what a team you guys are. How large are these?
They stand about a meter.
Yeah.
About a meter tall.
Yeah,
3 feet.
Yeah. No, they'd be beautiful to see in a room, but definitely lots of questions about them. The questions, it's just like crazy. And they feel like they belong together, these two pieces. The left.
Yeah, I think they do. We do. We think they do.
Yeah. Definitely.
Encourage people to buy two.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing to encourage people to do things. I think when they start collecting, they might buy one, and then they say,
we actually mean sell these as a pair.
Yeah. Good to know that.
Yeah.
No, I love the female figure on the right as well. It's just there is this void missing in the middle, yet it's not like it's like these two pieces have been torn apart and beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
We can only unfortunately show them the shapes like from this one angle, but on our show. But again, go to the website and see more. And if anybody has questions, definitely reach out to Blake and Boky about their work on here. So this one was spirits. So
this is also spirits.
Yeah, this is also spirits.
Yeah.
And again,
this is the image we started out with on the front end of the show. And I just, I see these rods that are running through the middle of the bodies. Can you tell us a little bit about where that comes from? And the other parts of the clay that lay over top of it, but you have there's this infrastructure that has these rods that are bent and woven in some, and then some on like one on the right, they're like shards of light, and they're disconnected bodies that are held together by these. Can you tell us a little bit about the reasoning and how you design this?
Well, I think it depends on what the piece wants to say conceptually. The one on the right has the rods coming out like this, and that's all about strength, resilience of the woman, really.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas the other one, each one is going to be different because we are all different inside. Right. And so if you look through the Spirit Collection, you'll find all sorts of different ones. You'll even find some that have, instead of just rods, that have 3D printed posts that are basically built in 3D and then cast in bronze. But every time it's going to be different. And I think one of the things that's really important with the Spirit Collection, because of the conceptual, is to look at the negative space, because sometimes that takes on more importance than what's actually there. It's that space surrounding it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the space around it does give the strength to the figure itself. You need that to support it, because like you said, it's a balance. And I love the figure on the right. It's just gorgeous. There's this I don't know. There's kind of a freedom aspect to it. Like it's moving. It feels like it's maybe that's what it is. It feels like it's moving a little bit. Like there's some motion in it. Yet it's a solid. One leg is up, the other one's is secured to the ground, and it's beautiful. But it's nice that these things you're marrying two technologies, like the traditional plus now you're dealing with 3D printing.
Yes.
Well, yeah. How do you work with that? When do you stop the 3D printing and start the layering of wax, or the process that you're going to do to build?
We like to mix the two where we can, and the spirits, they were about, as Boky said earlier, they're about our inner selves, and so also we wanted to express the idea that our inner selves are very important, and it's kind of the zeitgeist of today. We are looking inside,
Right.
and becoming more and more aware of our inner selves.
Yeah.
So
here you can see you both working on, I guess, different things. I mean, not specifically that one piece.
Well, yeah, no, Boky's working on her self-portrait.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do often work on the same piece at the same time.
Yeah, which is amazing because we don't have to talk. We know exactly where we're going with it. And he'll be on one end and I'll be on the other end. And we're working in ciselage, which means it's destructive. If we do something wrong, we can't put it back.
Yeah.
And so that's really the amazing thing, is that we're able to do that.
We've got our little dog who wants to be
in the picture.
Well, he definitely is in the picture.
Sorry about that.
No. It's not barking or anything. It's just like it's seen all this stuff before.
Yeah.
No, I don't know about a white dog in a studio, but it just kind of
he gets a lot of baths.
Yeah.
But the foundry work, Boky's working right in the foundry in Bologna, and the top right, I'm buffing a patina, and I believe that was I believe that was in Massa.
Yeah, that was in France.
Yeah. Different studios. Yeah, we just pulled some things together so that you were actually working together in a team part. And now this sculpture was the same as the one I had previously shown, right? Is it only
it's the Spirits collection? Yeah, they're all unique.
Right. So this one's a little bit more the green tinge to the bronze. Do you polish them to become more bronze-like, or do you let them?
The actual surface patina, the surface color is made by the acid that you put on it, and so the blue would be nitric oxide.
Yeah, and less traditional. Whereas this green is very traditional.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think do you mix them up between shows as to how you want them to, like shiny bronze, or do they patina it in a certain way for a certain
we rarely do a shiny bronze because the bronze will actually oxidize and get darker anyway. So we tend to patina them at the foundry. We don't do it ourselves. It's very tricky to do it, and you certainly need to have all the equipment, the protective equipment to do it.
Yeah, and also you need somebody very specialized so that as you're guiding them with what you're looking for, they can give you what you want, because it is very tricky.
Yeah, it's a method.
Do you work with a number of different foundries then?
We have
we have one main one in Bologna, and then
you tend to know what you want pretty much. You've worked with them long enough, you kind of know.
Yeah.
And also there's one technician there who we're very attached to.
Yeah.
Well, that happens, and I think you don't want to take a chance. You know what you're going to get at the other end, because you've done so much work in the front end to have it destroyed in the foundry at the other end. not destroyed, but maybe of a different vision than you wanted. It's nice to have somebody that sort of is your third partner almost. He's like, they know
Yes.
what you want. And they also great consult with, they can say, have you thought of this? Maybe we should do that. And it's nice to trust in those kind of relationships to build them. I know in Canada, there's not quite as many foundries that are like, there's a few in Toronto and different places, but once you find one that you're happy with, you why switch? They're about the same price probably, but you got to pay for the experience, and it's sure a lot easier at the other end when you know that the client's going to be happy with it, or when the person who buys it says it looks like they expect it to look.
Mm-hmm.
There is a wonderful foundry in Canada, though, that we love in Georgetown, which is about an hour and a half outside of Toronto. And it's a small foundry, family run.
Family run, yeah.
Yeah.
And we do all the digital. So I'll talk to that in a bit.
Yeah.
Back to this, spirits. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Well, okay, we'll get there. We got some time. Again, this is and now you've got a lot of, I only showed a few of these images here just for people to see what the diversity of a figure, and that's been torn apart and put back together again, and how the rods are integrated into this body on the left, really defining shape. Like you got these lines of shape of wrapping around in the figure. I love this. It's like drawing. It's just like a beautiful drawing in 3D. Can you talk to me about these two figures, I guess? And
well, the interior structures, besides giving us the conceptual importance of them, is that we need them for structure. We need them to hold the piece together. And one of the things I wanted to do is be able to put different pieces of the body onto the sculpture. And we sort of developed a way of working so that we could hold them there by these rods, so that one of the unique things about this series is that many of them would move. You could, if you put the piece on your spin dryer at the spin cycle and it started vibrating, they would move. And that's one of the things that I wanted to do, because when we started this series, we sort of looked at it and said, how can we change a bronze figure to be completely different? How different can we make it from the traditional? And you very rarely see the inside of a bronze sculpture. You very rarely see one that has parts that move.
Yeah, these ones have very shell-like feelings to them. Like they're hollow, and you feel like you can, and you're as interested in the inside as well. What I really like about them is the feeling of lightness. They're not a heavy bronze, and part of it is they're pinned on one side, on one leg, like, and it gives you that airspace that goes underneath that other leg a little bit, so that it feels lighter, rather than, like you said, it's fixed all around to the base, right? Where a lot of sculpture is like that. The one on the left really reminds me a lot of some of the graphite legs and pieces, and that people who have lost a leg or something, I think they're graphite. I think they're prosthesis that'll be put to their leg, and they can. I've seen where runners have two of them and can never run on those things. They're like spring loaded. I mean, they're amazing. But I like the factor that they're not all just straight pinned. I'm asking myself questions when I see this curved piece that's attached to the bottom. It has a different flow. I mean, it almost flows out of the rods that are wrapping around the body. Like it comes from the bottom and up and around. So they belong together. I mean, it's a really nice pin for on the base. I just want to let you know that. We talked about this, a little bit of a detail to show people how some of this structure is put within the shell.
Yeah. Could be rather daunting at times.
Yeah.
And there's a lot involved in actually ensuring that it is strong enough to hold the piece.
Right.
So on the right, that's Dionysian. On the right we have, is it wax? Yeah,
it's in wax.
It's in wax. So you've got the wax figure on the right, and we hadn't cast it yet in bronze. It's terribly fragile at this point, and in fact, as we pack it in these styrofoam peanuts, in a case, in a styrofoam peanuts, and take it to the foundry, and along the way it sheds. We lose pieces. It becomes smaller because they're just so fragile.
Plus, then in the foundry, when they go to pour it, it can change as well.
Yeah.
So sometimes we get really happy surprises.
Mm-hmm.
It gets twisted in some way that we hadn't thought of, but it's absolutely genius, So you never know. You just never know what you're going to get until you actually see the bronze.
Well,
and also when we're building them in wax, the rods that you were talking about, those guys, when we're working in the summertime, you have no idea how hard it is because it's hot in the studio.
Yeah.
And wax. So as soon as you've got one rod up and it's in the perfect space and you start working on the next one, the first one falls off. So it's quite a process.
How important is risk taking important in your work? Like as a sculptor, how important is the risk factor important?
Well,
for me, it's extremely important to be free and uncensored to build whatever it is that I want to build in order to express what I want to express, because I feel that for me, the art is all about the conceptual, the message behind it.
Right.
And I don't know, how about you? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think we expect to fail. So
that's a good way of looking at it, yes.
And so failure is not something that we it's not something that's going to get us down. I mean, it probably gets us down at the moment, a few swear words. But then we
go for a walk.
We go for a walk and come back at it. And I don't think that, we try and lean into the discomfort, get out of your comfort zone and try and produce. It's not easy to produce art that is really original.
Yes.
Well, and that's one of the things we're trying to do in this collection.
Yeah. And find originality within yourself. I mean, you're not trying to replicate somebody else's, a Michelangelo. You're not trying to do that kind of a thing. It's great that you could do that and raise the bar really high, and choose what you're doing. But I just find that a lot of artists, they do get complacent and happy that this stuff is selling, this is doing well. Let's just stay in this groove for a while and we'll eat well and we'll buy a car.
Well, that's important too.
Eating well, I'm a great believer in eating and living decently.
Eating well, and
poor artists. There's no such thing. Do not be a poor artist, a poor starving artist, if you can help it, like, for sure. But I've seen in the past with other artists that they'll do a major change in their style or subject matter, and I find that your audiences are typically 10 years behind you. That's a decade. And or not even about a half a decade, but what it is by the time they see your work, you've moved on to other things. You're doing other things. And you want people to see what you're doing now. But like I said before, there might be just at the early stages of of buying. Whether they bought in the secondary market or at auction or some things like that. And now they're just discovering you new. And all of a sudden they look at your website, well, that's really different than what I just bought. And now there's this, like you said, you're not stopping to growing, and they're starting just growing at a starting point. Not just, I guess it depends where they jump in on your career as to what you're doing. You have some kind of something to say about something like that, about your career starting and
Well, it always happens that you need to take some time off. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And so COVID was a break, but then on the other hand, we started doing the digital, really dug into the digital. This is the and there again, the inner structure still very, very important. And we covered it with an outside. Now these are done. This is photographed on a platform called ZBrush, or ZBrush if you're in America, in the States. But it gives you an idea of how we actually build the sculpture from the inside out. And very, all the digital work is, and this is the foundry that I use to do digital, is Artcast in Ontario.
Okay, perfect.
They're the only ones that I've been able to find in the world. And let me tell you, I've looked in a lot of places.
And we've tested different countries.
This is the best foundry that I can, and it's Ontario. So it's really nice because I can send them the file by email. I can send the sculpture by email.
Yeah, perfect.
They'll have it printed and produce a bronze for me.
So you create an infrastructure, which is your, I guess, that bone structure. Then they can wrap a skin on it as to how you want the skin. At least I would imagine that they're in separate pieces, and they put them on together, and they can be. I'm only assuming. Yeah.
Actually, the way this one worked is we actually built the outer, the one in the middle in bronze, and then that was scanned, and then from there it was scanned into this program and then the inner structure. Blake spent most of COVID doing that.
Yeah.
That's a real lockdown when you do that. And it's been almost 2.5 years just on one project. And
they printed in a wax polymer on a flatbed.
Yeah.
So the whole piece comes out in one piece. In one piece.
But it's a powder bed printer. So there's no structure inside it. They're just the powder.
And the thing that's important to note about the digital work, I'm sorry, do you want to talk?
No.
Is the fact that there is a preconceived notion when we talk about digital sculpture. And people think, oh, well, yeah, that's because they're going to make a series of 200 or something. And that's not at all the point. The point is that when Blake has a digital piece, it's maybe an edition of 3, plus maybe 1 artist proof and 3. And the idea is that then you can decide, you want it in 5 meters? Perfect, we can do that. Or you want it 1 meter, we can do that too. So that's the point, that you can choose exactly what it is that you want. And if you want a monumental piece, you can have that too.
You should take this and propose this to be the new Oscar.
Yeah.
In the States, have these. It would be an amazing thing to see them change that stupid Oscar up to be something a little bit more than that stilted little. Have some kind of semblance of importance. But I loved it, and I threw in that little detail on the foot. I think there's some beautiful pieces. I mean, it's very intricate,
very complex,
and complicated. Yeah, it is. And I think that's the nice thing with some of the digital stuff. You can do the complexities that maybe you couldn't do traditionally. Like you said, also working on the inside of the structure.
You couldn't build this piece by hand. It would be impossible.
You'd be a lot of welding.
And then you couldn't pour it because you couldn't make a mold.
Yeah.
Right. You'd never be able to get it apart. Right? Because it would be fused three-dimensionally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how you would half it in half and put them together, which, you know, traditionally that's how a lot of them times they're pulled and cut in half and molded that way, I would say. But here's a bit of your studio. People always like to see how cluttered it is, and I dare say I don't even want to show anybody my cluttered studio. It's more of a storage area at times, but I do love to see this. These figures, they float so nicely in a space, and they're having conversations. All these pieces are talking to one another. He says, "Can I borrow a limb? Can I borrow an arm? Can I borrow?" Get me a drink. You find that some sculpture does have conversations some days when you walk into the studio that one feels like they're more important than the other one, and it wants you over near them. It's sort of like a cat.
You know, it's funny. I think that I'd say that really the one that we're most interested on is the one that we're building now.
I knew you were going to say that.
And the other ones tend to get lost in a corner.
Although there's support material. Well, I think I found that a lot of times even in my own work, one piece is there in the background, but sometimes it sneaks its way into the piece that you're working on from a previous time that you were working on it. Not that you're going to replicate it, but you remember, oh, that's something I kind of like, whether it be a color or a certain stroke you used, or And do you use the same or similar models all the time, or some work, or do you change it up?
No, we change it up. Keep it changing, and it's fun to have.
Does the model a lot of times give to the sculpture relative to who they are?
Do you know, I think the model really, when you're working with a live model, the live model kind of lends their soul to the sculpture.
Yeah.
I think it's really important, and it really helps, you know, to have them there.
Right. So do you do model sketching as well, or do you mostly just go right straight into the clay?
I like to go right straight in. I like to sketch in 3D. So I go right into the clay.
Yeah. No, well, that was great. I mean, we can't talk about everything you're doing. We're going to probably have to have you come back and talk about the 3D aspects of building a sculpture in 3D. And so we might have you back again, and we'll get immersed in that a little bit, and some of the technologies, some of the people that would like to know.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look forward to that.
Yeah. Well, there he is.
I came back. It was a great show. Your stuff is beautiful. This is why they don't have me on. So it's absolutely gorgeous. How much for the dog? No, I'm sorry. So I saw that. I was like, oh, livable art. So here's the question I ask everybody. If somebody wants to buy one of your pieces, where does it start at? Where do they go to? And you can do it whether you want to do it in euros or dollars or that play money in Canada, however you want to do it.
Because we've got the U.S. Chicago gallery, we and because we're in euro, but that's a hard transition to do. So what we say is we price everything in U.S. dollars. It's priced the same no matter where you go, any of the galleries. Okay. Probably you're in Saskatoon, I think. So Vancouver would probably be the closest. And I would say Matthew Petley Jones in Vancouver. Or you could drop me a line and I'll let you know where it is. And often we do have things in Canada. So we could.
But what does it range from? Like price wise?
It starts at about $16,000 US.
Okay. So you didn't use that Canadian stuff, Paul, so we can't make fun.
You can use that Canadian stuff, absolutely.
We do. Most of the artists come on, they'll say it's it's 5,000 Canadian. We're like, that's $4 US. So, but this is 16,000 US. That's like 16,000 US. I have nowhere to go with that. But no, your stuff is cool. The other thing I thought was very interesting, I was looking at your site, you take Bitcoin. So you take
Yes.
crypto, I guess, to pay for it as well, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah. And
Wow.
we're happy to take that. I'm very much into crypto.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool. So all my friends in Dubai, there you go. Now you can buy art.
Now
So-
they'll have a hard time getting it into Dubai, though, I'm afraid.
Oh.
Because the figure
Oh,
is
your
not.
sculpture, really?
Well, you might. Dubai, you'd probably be okay.
Dubai would be okay.
Yeah.
You're certainly not going to get any of it into Saudi.
Yeah, no, that's probably a little more of an issue. Dubai's pretty open. If you go to some of the galleries there, your stuff's pretty tame compared to some of the things I've seen there. So yeah, so you're good. You're good.
We'll just
So
call
very
it
cool.
bronze. Just call it bronze, and we're just shipping so many pounds of bronze. That's it.
There you go. But your stuff is absolutely gorgeous. And yes, to what Paul said earlier, I'd love to have you come back and go through your other processes and whatnot. I'll let you guys figure that out. I just sit here and look pretty. That's my job.
That would be great.
Sorry, Boky. That's what I do. So, but you guys did great. Thank you so much for being here. And all your fans, hopefully they enjoyed it. And everybody, next Thursday, we'll have somebody else back that will tell us about what they do.
And your website.
Once again, thank you so much. And their website is below if you want to see what they are, who they are. And if you can't figure out how to get a hold of them, get a hold of us and we'll put you in touch.
You betcha.
So there you go.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Cheers. Have a great day.
You bet.
Bye.
Take care.